The morning light crept slowly through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Kate stood in front of her bedroom mirror. Her hands shook slightly as she tried to put on her earrings, the same earrings she had worn to hundreds of royal events. Today, they felt heavier than usual. William sat on the edge of their bed watching her. He could see the tension in her shoulders. He could see how she was fighting to keep herself together. Kate turned around to face him. Her eyes were red, but she had not let the tears fall yet. William knew that look. He had seen it before during their most difficult times. But this morning felt different. This morning felt like everything was falling apart around them. The letter they had received the night before sat on the nightstand between them. Neither of them wanted to touch it again. Neither of them wanted to read those words one more time. William stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the gardens where his children played every day. George was probably already awake, asking the nanny about breakfast. Would be choosing which dress to wear. Louis would be running around with his favorite toy. The thought of his children made his chest tight. How could he protect them from what was coming? How could he shield them from the storm that was about to hit their family? Kate joined him at the window. She placed her hand on his arm, but said nothing. They had learned over the years that sometimes silence was better than words. Sometimes just being together was enough. But today, even their closeness could not push away the fear that was growing inside both of them. The fear that everything they had built together might crumble. The fear that their love might not be strong enough. To survive what was ahead, the palace around them felt cold, despite the warm morning sun. The same halls where they had shared so many happy moments now felt like they were closing in on them. Every portrait on the wall seemed to be watching them. Every piece of furniture seemed to judge them. The weight of royal tradition pressed down on their shoulders like a heavy blanket they could not remove. William remembered the day he had proposed to Kate. He remembered how sure he had felt about their future together. He remembered believing that their love could overcome any challenge. Now he wondered if he had been naive. Now he wondered if love was really enough when you carried the weight of a crown and the expectations of an entire nation. Kate walked back to the dresser and picked up her phone. She scrolled through the messages from her family. Her mother had sent 3 texts asking if she was okay. Her sister Pippa had called twice. Her brother James had sent a funny photo trying to cheer her up, but even her family's love felt distant this morning. Even their support felt like it was not enough to fill the hole that was growing in her heart. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made them both freeze. It was probably just palace staff going about their morning duties, but these days every sound made them nervous. Every unexpected visitor made them wonder if more bad news was coming. They'd learned that trouble rarely came alone. When one crisis hit the royal family, it was usually followed by others. William sat back down on the bed and put his head in his hands. Kate had never seen him look so defeated, not even during his mother's funeral, not even during the darkest days of his military service. She wanted to comfort him, but she did not know what to say. She wanted to tell him that everything would be okay, but she was not sure she believed it herself. The letter on the nightstand seemed to grow larger every time they looked at it. The words written on that paper had the power to destroy everything. They had worked for everything they had sacrificed for. The person who had sent it knew exactly how much damage it could cause. They had chosen their moment perfectly. They had waited until William and Kate were already struggling with other pressures before delivering this final blow. Kate thought about the early days of their relationship, when they were just university students worried about exams and part-time jobs. When their biggest concern was finding time to see each other between classes. Those days felt like a lifetime ago. Those days felt like they had belonged to different people. The couple who had fallen in love at St. Andrews could never have imagined the challenges they would face as husband and wife in the royal family. The phone rang, breaking the silence that had settled over their room. William looked at the caller. ID, and his face grew even more serious. It was his private secretary, the man who helped manage his official duties and public appearances. William let it ring. He was not ready to face the outside world yet. He was not ready to pretend that everything was normal when his entire life felt like it was spinning out of control. Kate sat down beside him and took his hand. Her touch was warm and familiar. For a moment, William felt some of the tension leave his body. For a moment, he remembered why he had fallen in love with this woman. She had always been his anchor in the storm. She had always been the one person who could make him feel like himself instead of just a prince with duties and obligations. But even Kate's love could not make the letter disappear. Even her strength could not change what they both knew was coming. The battle they had been fighting in private was about to become very public. The whole world was about to see just how fragile their perfect royal marriage really was. The breakfast table felt unusually quiet as William and Kate sat across from each other. The morning newspaper lay folded between them, but neither had the courage to open it. They both knew what the headlines would say. They both knew their private pain was about to become public entertainment. The staff moved around them quietly, serving tea and toast, but the food remained untouched on their plates. Kate stared at her cup, watching the steam rise from her tea. She thought about all the mornings they had shared at this same table. Happy mornings when they laughed about the children's latest adventures. Peaceful mornings when they planned family vacations. Difficult mornings when they discussed royal duties and public appearances. But this morning felt different from all the others. This morning felt like an ending. William's phone had been buzzing constantly since 7 o'clock. Messages from his father, calls from palace advisors, texts from his brother Harry, who had somehow heard the news from California. Each notification made William's stomach twist tighter. He knew they all wanted answers. He knew they all wanted to know what he and Kate planned to do next, but he did not have answers. He barely understood what was happening to his own life. The letter that had started everything still sat upstairs on their nightstand. Kate had suggested they burn it. William had wanted to tear it into pieces, but they both knew that destroying the paper would not make the problem disappear. The person who had written those words had copies. The person who wanted to hurt them had planned this attack very carefully. Kate finally spoke, breaking the heavy silence that had settled over the room. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She asked William if he thought they should send the children away for a few days, maybe to her parents' house in Berkshire. Maybe somewhere the media could not find them. William nodded slowly, had been thinking the same thing. Their children did not deserve to be caught in the middle of this storm. The sound of car engines outside made them both look toward the window. Through the curtains, they could see photographers gathering at the palace gates. The media circus was beginning earlier than they had expected. Soon there would be reporters asking questions they could not answer. Soon there would be cameras capturing every expression on their faces. Soon their private pain would become headline news around the world. William remembered his mother's warnings about the press. She had told him how they could build you up one day and tear you down the next. She had explained how they turned personal struggles into public entertainment. He had thought he understood what she meant, but now he realized he had never truly grasped the full weight of living under constant scrutiny. Kate stood up from the table and walked to the window. She pulled the curtain back just enough to see the growing crowd outside. There were at least 20 photographers now. Some had large cameras with long lenses. Others had video equipment. All of them were waiting for any sign of movement from inside the palace. Any glimpse of the royal couple who had become the center of a brewing scandal. The irony was not lost on either of them. For years, they had worked to maintain their privacy. They had fought to keep their children out of the spotlight. They had tried to balance their public duties with their need for a normal family life. Now all of that careful planning seemed pointless. Now their most private moments were about to be dissected by strangers who had never met them. William joined Kate at the window and placed his hand on her shoulder. Together, they watched the media gather like vultures waiting for their next meal. Some of the photographers had been following their family for years. Some had taken pictures at their wedding. Some had captured their children's first steps. Now those same people were here to document what might be the beginning of the end of their marriage. Kate thought about calling her mother, but she knew Catherine Middleton would only worry more if she heard her daughter's voice right now. She thought about talking to William's grandmother, but the Queen had her own health concerns to deal with. She thought about reaching out to friends, but most of them had their own families to protect. For the first time since joining the royal family, Kate felt truly alone. The palace staff continued their daily routines around them, but William and Kate could see the concern in their eyes. These people had worked for the royal family for years. They had seen scandals come and go. They had watched marriages crumble under public pressure. They knew the signs of a family in crisis. They knew that not all royal fairy tales had happy endings. William's phone rang again. This time it was his private secretary, calling for the 5th time that morning. William knew he could not avoid the conversation forever. He knew decisions had to be made about public appearances and official statements, but every choice felt like a trap. Every option seemed to lead to more pain for his family. Kate moved away from the window and sat back down at the table. She picked up her teacup, but her hands were shaking so badly she had to put it down again. The weight of the situation was beginning to show on her face. The woman who had always appeared so composed in public was falling apart in the privacy of her own home. The children's voices could be heard upstairs as they got ready for school. George was probably arguing with his nanny about which shoes to wear. Charlotte was likely singing one of her favorite songs while brushing her teeth. Louis was probably running around his room, pretending to be a superhero. Their innocent laughter felt like a knife in both parents' hearts. William finally answered his phone, knowing he could not put off the inevitable any longer. The conversation that followed would determine how they handled the crisis. The decisions made in the next few hours would shape their family's future. As he listened to his advisor's urgent voice, William realized that their quiet morning together might be the last peaceful moment they would share for a very long time. By afternoon, the situation had grown much worse. William paced back and forth in his private study, while Kate sat in the chair by his desk. The phone calls had not stopped coming. Officials wanted immediate answers. Government advisors demanded a clear plan. The media was asking for official statements. But William and Kate felt trapped with no good options in front of them. The letter that had started their nightmare contained accusations that could destroy everything they had built together. Someone from William's past had decided to tell a story that painted him in the worst possible light. The timing was perfect for maximum damage. The royal family was already dealing with other challenges. The public was watching every move they made. One more scandal could push everything over the edge. Kate had read the letter so many times she knew every word by heart. Each sentence felt like a personal attack on their marriage. Each paragraph contained details that only someone very close to William could have known. The betrayal hurt almost as much as the accusations themselves. Someone they had trusted had decided to use their private moments as weapons against them. William stopped pacing and sat down heavily in his chair. His face looked older than it had that morning. The stress was beginning to show in the lines. Around his eyes, Kate reached across the desk and took his hand. Her touch was gentle, but he could feel her fingers trembling. They were both fighting to stay strong, but the pressure was breaking them down piece by piece. The children had been sent to Kate's parents' house for the rest of the week. George had asked why he could not go to school. Charlotte had wanted to. Know why Mama looked so sad? Louis had cried when the car pulled away from the palace. Watching their children leave had been one of the hardest moments of the entire day. But William and Kate knew it was the right choice. The media attention would only get worse before it got better. Kate's phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. "Everything okay with the children?" she had written. "They're asking when you were coming to visit." Kate showed the message too. William, but neither of them knew how to respond. How could they explain to their children that their family was under attack? How could they make 3 young kids understand why strangers wanted to hurt their parents? The palace staff had been instructed to say nothing to reporters. But William and Kate knew that some employees had probably already been offered money for inside information. The media was willing to pay large amounts for any details about the royal family's private life. Loyalty only went so far when people had their own families to feed. William's brother Harry called from California. He had seen the early reports online and wanted to know if there was anything he could do to help. William appreciated the offer, but he knew Harry had his own challenges to deal with. The brothers had grown apart over the years. Their different choices had created distance between them. But in moments like this, William remembered why family relationships were so important. Kate thought about the woman who had written the letter. She had met her several times at official events. She had seemed friendly and trustworthy. She'd even sent Christmas cards to the children. Now Kate realized how wrong she had been about this person. Now she understood that some people were very good at hiding their true intentions. The afternoon news. Programs were already running stories about trouble in the royal marriage. The reporters did not have all the facts yet, but they were speculating about everything from money problems to infidelity. Each guess was worse than the last. Each theory painted William and Kate as people they did not recognize. The truth was bad enough without adding lies and exaggerations. William's father called to offer his support. King Charles had dealt with his own share of marriage scandals and media attention. He understood what his son was going through. But even his experience and wisdom could not make the current situation easier. Every royal marriage was different. Every crisis had its own unique challenges. Kate walked to the window and looked out at the photographers who were still gathered outside. Some had brought chairs and umbrellas, planning to stay for hours. Others had food and drinks delivered too. Their positions, they were settling in for a long wait. They knew that eventually William and Kate would have to leave the palace. When that happened, they would be ready with their cameras. The woman who had written the damaging letter was probably watching the news coverage from her own home. She was probably feeling satisfied with the chaos she had created. William wondered, what had motivated her to destroy relationships and hurt innocent children? He wondered if she truly believed her accusations, or if she simply wanted attention and money. Kate's sister Pippa called to check on her. She offered to come to the palace, but Kate told her to stay away. The media would follow anyone connected to the family. Photographers would take pictures of every visitor and create news stories about every conversation. It was better for everyone if Kate handled this crisis with just William by her side. The legal team arrived in the late afternoon to discuss their options. They could sue for defamation, but that would mean a long court battle.
Ow!
They could ignore the accusations, but silence might be seen as admission of guilt. They could issue a strong denial, but that would give the story even more attention. Every choice had serious consequences that could affect the entire royal family. As evening approached, William and Kate realized they had been awake for nearly 12 hours dealing with crisis after crisis. They had barely eaten anything all day and not had a single moment to process their emotions. The adrenaline that had kept them going was beginning to wear off. Soon they would have to face the full weight of what was happening to their lives. The palace felt different as darkness fell outside. The familiar rooms seemed cold and unwelcoming. The portraits on the walls looked down at them with expressions that seemed almost disapproving. William and Kate were beginning to understand that their home might never feel safe and comfortable again. The evening brought no relief from the storm that had taken over their lives. William sat alone in his study, staring at the television screen where news anchors discussed his marriage like it was a game show. Kate had gone upstairs to try to rest, but he could hear her moving around their bedroom, unable to sleep. The palace felt like it was under siege, with reporters camping outside, phone calls coming every few minutes. The legal team had left after 3 hours of difficult conversations. They had explained all the options, but none of them seemed good. Fighting the accusations in court would take years and cost millions. Ignoring them might make people think they were true. Responding publicly would give the story even more attention. William felt trapped no matter which direction he chose to go. Kate came back downstairs wearing her pajamas and a robe. Her hair was messy and her eyes were red from crying. She had been trying to call her children at her parents' house, but they were already asleep. The sound of their voices on the answering machine had made her cry even harder. She missed them terribly, but she knew they were safer away from the palace. William muted the television and pulled Kate down onto the couch beside him. They sat together in silence, watching the reporters on screen move their mouths without sound. It felt strange to see their lives being discussed by strangers who had never met them. It felt surreal to watch their marriage being analyzed by people who knew nothing about their real relationship. The woman who had written the letter was now giving interviews to anyone willing to pay her. She had hired her own publicist to manage her media appearances. She was telling her story to magazines and television shows around the world. Each interview contained new details that hurt William and Kate more deeply. Each conversation revealed private moments that should have stayed private forever. Kate thought about the early days of their relationship, when they could walk around London without being recognized, when they could go to restaurants and movies like normal couples, when their biggest worry was whether William would remember to call her after his military training. Those simple days felt like they had happened to different people. The young woman who had fallen in love at university could never have imagined this kind of public humiliation. William's anger was growing stronger as the hours passed. He was angry at the woman who had betrayed their trust. He was angry at the media for turning their pain into entertainment. He was angry at himself for not seeing this attack coming. Most of all, he was angry that his children would have to grow up reading lies about their father in history books. The palace kitchen sent up a tray of food, but neither William nor Kate had any appetite. The sandwiches sat untouched on the coffee table while they tried to figure out what to do next. Every decision felt enormous. Every choice could change their lives forever. The weight of the crown had never felt heavier than it did that evening. Kate's mother called around 9 o'clock. She was worried about her daughter and wanted to know if she should come to London. Kate told her to stay in Berkshire with the children. She did not want her parents to be pulled into the media circus. She did not want photographers following her family members around asking questions about her marriage. The television news showed pictures of William and Kate from happier times. Their wedding day when they looked so young and hopeful. Christmas. Mornings with their children opening presents. Official visits where they smiled and waved to crowds. Now those same pictures were being used to tell a story about a marriage in crisis. The happy memories were being turned into evidence of deception. William wondered how many people actually believed the accusations. He wondered if his friends thought he was capable of the things he was being accused of. He wondered if the public would ever trust him again, even if he proved his innocence. The court of public opinion was often harsher than any legal court. Once people made up their minds about someone, it was almost impossible to change their thinking. Kate tried to read a book to distract herself, but the words blurred together on the page. She tried to watch a movie but could not follow the plot. She tried to take a bath, but the warm water could not wash away the stress that had settled deep in her bones. Nothing felt normal anymore. Even the smallest activities felt strange and difficult. The night security guards reported that more media trucks had arrived outside the palace gates. International news crews were flying in from around the world. This story was becoming global entertainment. People in countries William and Kate had never visited were now discussing their personal lives over dinner. Their private pain was becoming public spectacle on every continent. William's grandmother had called earlier to offer her support, but even the Queen's wisdom could not fix this situation. She had lived through many royal scandals, but this one felt different. This one struck at the heart of everything the modern royal family was trying to represent. If William and Kate's marriage failed, it would damage the entire institution. They were supposed to protect Tate, curled up on the couch, with her head on William's shoulder. For a few minutes, they almost felt like themselves again, just a husband and wife facing a difficult time together. But then another news bulletin would come on the television, reminding them that their problems were not private anymore. Their marriage was now public property to be examined and judged by millions of strangers. The woman who had started this nightmare was probably sleeping peacefully in her own bed tonight. She had gotten exactly what she wanted. Her name was now known around the world. She would never have to worry about money again. The book deals and movie rights would make her rich. Meanwhile, William and Kate were living through the worst night of their lives, wondering if their marriage would survive until morning. As midnight approached, they both realized that tomorrow would bring even more challenges, more interviews from their accuser, more speculation from reporters, more questions they could not answer. The storm was far from over, and they were not sure they had the strength to keep fighting. The next morning brought no relief from the nightmare that had taken over their lives. William woke up on the couch in his study where he had fallen asleep around 3 in the morning. His neck was stiff and his head was pounding. Kate was still, curled up beside him, breathing softly in her sleep. For just a moment he watched her peaceful face and remembered why he had fallen in love with her all those years ago. The television was still on, showing the morning news programs. William's heart sank as he saw their wedding photo displayed on the screen with the words, "Royal Marriage in Crisis," written beneath it. The reporters were discussing their relationship like it was a soap opera. They were speculating about everything, from counseling sessions to possible divorce proceedings. None of it was true, but the damage was being done with every broadcast. Kate stirred and opened her eyes. For a few seconds, she looked confused about where she was. Then reality came flooding. Back in her face crumpled with the weight of everything they were facing. William pulled her closer and kissed the top of her head. They had promised each other for better or worse, but neither of them had imagined it could get this bad. The morning newspapers were even worse than the television coverage. The front pages showed old photos of William with other women from before his marriage. The headlines suggested that Kate had known about his past relationships but had chosen to ignore them. Every story was designed to make readers believe that their entire marriage had been built on lies and deception. William's phone had 27 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from palace officials and government advisors, demanding immediate meetings. Some were from friends offering support. Few were from journalists trying to get quotes for their stories. William turned off his phone and threw it across the room. He could not handle any more conversations about his private life. Kate tried to eat some toast, but her stomach was too upset to keep food down. She had barely slept for 3 days, and the stress was taking a physical toll on her body. Her hands shook when she tried to drink her tea. Her head felt dizzy when she stood up too quickly. The woman who had always appeared strong and composed in public was falling apart in the privacy of her own home. The palace staff moved around them quietly, trying to maintain normal routines, but everyone could feel the tension in the air. The housekeepers whispered in corners. Security guards looked more serious than usual. Even the kitchen staff seemed nervous about bringing food to the royal couple. Everyone knew that this crisis was different from others the family had faced. William's father called, around 9 o'clock, asking for an emergency meeting. The king was worried about the damage this scandal could do to the entire royal family. He was getting pressure from government officials to handle the situation quickly and decisively. William agreed to meet with him that afternoon, but he dreaded the conversation they would have to have. Kate's sister Pippa sent a text message saying she was coming to London, whether Kate wanted her there or not. She had watched the news coverage and could not stand by while her sister suffered alone. Kate was grateful for the support, but she worried about dragging more family members into the media circus that surrounded the palace. The woman who had started this nightmare appeared on 3 different television programs that morning. Each interview revealed new details about her alleged relationship with William. She described private conversations that sounded believable but were completely false. She showed photographs that had been taken out of context to support her lies. Her performance was so convincing that even some of William's friends began to have doubts. William paced around the room, trying to think of a way to fight back against the accusations. Every option seemed to make the situation worse. If he denied the claims too strongly, people would think he was hiding something. If he tried to ignore them, people would assume they were true. If he provided evidence of his innocence, it would only give the story more attention. Kate called her children at her parents' house, but the conversation was difficult. George asked when he could come home. Charlotte wanted to know why there were so many people with cameras outside Grandma's house. Louis just cried because he missed his parents. Kate promised they would be together soon, but she had no idea when that would be possible. The legal team returned for another meeting, bringing even more bad news. The woman's story was spreading to international media outlets. Publishers were already bidding on the rights to her book. Movie producers were interested in her story. She was being treated like a celebrity, while William and Kate were being portrayed as villains in their own lives. William's anger reached a breaking point when he saw a headline suggesting that Kate had known about his alleged affair and had stayed married to him for money and status. The accusation was so far from the truth that it made him feel physically sick. Kate was the most honest and loyal person he had ever known. She had given up her own dreams and privacy to marry him. She deserved better than to have her character destroyed by lies. Kate found William in the bathroom, throwing up from stress and exhaustion. She held his head and rubbed his back the way she had done when their children were sick. In that moment, they both realized how much they needed each other. Whatever happened with the media and the public, they would face it together. Their love was stronger than the lies being told about them. The afternoon brought news that photographers had been following Kate's parents and taking pictures of the children at their house. The invasion of privacy had now extended to innocent grandparents and young kids who had done nothing wrong. William felt like his family was under attack from every direction with no safe place to hide. As evening approached, they both knew that tomorrow would bring the meeting with King Charles that could determine their future. They would have to decide whether to fight back against the accusations or step away from royal duties entirely. Either choice would change their lives forever. The fairy tale marriage that had captured the world's attention was now becoming a nightmare that seemed to have no end. The morning of their meeting with King Charles arrived, gray and cold. William and Kate had barely slept again, but they both knew this day would change everything. They dressed carefully, knowing that photographers would capture every detail of their appearance. Kate chose a simple navy dress that made her look strong and dignified. William wore his best suit, trying to project confidence. He did not feel inside. The drive to see his father felt like the longest journey of William's life. Kate sat beside him, holding his hand tightly as their car moved through the London streets. They could see people on sidewalks looking at their vehicle and pointing. Some held up phones to take pictures. Others just stared with curious expressions. Their private crisis had become public entertainment for millions of strangers. King Charles was waiting for them in his private office, looking older and more tired than usual. The stress of the scandal was affecting the entire royal family. Government officials had been calling him all week, demanding solutions. Prime Minister had expressed concerns about public confidence in the monarchy. Even their closest allies were beginning to worry about the damage being done to the institution they all served. William and Kate sat across from his father, feeling like children called to the principal's office. But this was not about homework or broken rules. This was about their lives and their future, and the future of their children. Every word spoken in this room would have consequences that lasted for generations. The weight of royal tradition and public expectations pressed down on all three of them. King Charles spoke first, explaining the impossible position the family was now in. The woman's accusations were spreading faster than anyone had expected. International media was treating her claims as fact without waiting for proof. Public opinion was turning against William and Kate with each passing day. Something had to be done quickly before the damage became permanent. William tried to defend himself, but his father raised a hand to stop him. Charles explained that this was not about guilt or innocence anymore. This was about protecting the monarchy from complete destruction. Sometimes innocent people had to make sacrifices for the greater good. Sometimes personal happiness had to be set aside for duty and tradition. Kate felt her heart breaking as she listened to the conversation. She understood what King Charles was suggesting without him having to say it directly. He wanted them to step back from royal duties. He wanted them to disappear from public life until the scandal died down. He was asking them to sacrifice their roles and their purpose to save the reputation of the crown. The room fell silent as William and Kate absorbed what they were being asked to do. Give up their royal duties meant giving up their identities. It meant their children would grow up in exile from their own family. It meant the woman who had lied about them would win completely. It meant their love story would end in disgrace and shame. William stood up, walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where he had played as a child. He thought about his mother and how she had faced her own scandals with dignity and grace. He thought about his grandmother who had dedicated her entire life to duty and service. He thought about his own children who deserved better than to grow up ashamed of their father. Kate joined him at the window and took his arm. She whispered that whatever he decided, she would support him completely. She reminded him that their love was stronger than any lie told about them. She said that their family was more important than titles or crowns or public opinion. Together they could survive anything as long as they had each other. But then something unexpected happened that changed everything. There was a soft knock on the door, and King Charles's private secretary entered the room, carrying a leather folder. Her face showed an expression of barely contained excitement mixed with disbelief. She apologized for interrupting, but said she had information that could not wait another moment. The secretary placed the folder on the desk and opened it carefully. Inside were documents that had been hidden for decades, letters and photographs, and official records that told a completely different story about the woman who had accused William. Evidence that she had done this before to other men. Proof that she was a professional blackmailer who targeted wealthy and powerful families. William and Kate moved closer to the desk as the secretary explained what had been discovered. A former employee of the woman had come forward with evidence of her criminal activities. Bank records showed payments from previous victims. Email conversations revealed her plans to destroy William's reputation. Phone recordings captured her, admitting that everything she had said was a complete lie. The relief that flooded through William and Kate was overwhelming. For days they had felt helpless against accusations they could not disprove.
Now they have evidence that would expose
their accuser as a fraud and a criminal. The truth was finally coming to light, and their nightmare was about to end. King Charles smiled for the first time in weeks as he read through the documents. This evidence would not only clear William's name, but would also discredit the woman completely. The media would have to apologize for spreading her lies. The public would understand that William and Kate had been innocent, victims of a cruel scheme. Within hours, the story had completely changed. The woman who had seemed so believable on television was now revealed as a criminal who had targeted multiple victims. Her interviews were pulled from websites. Her book deal was canceled. Her moment of fame turned into a lifetime of disgrace. As police began investigating her other crimes, William and Kate drove home to Kensington Palace, feeling like different people than they had been that morning. The photographers were still outside, but now they were asking different questions. Instead of scandal, they wanted to know about the couple's plans for the future. Instead of accusations, they were hearing about vindication and justice. That evening, William and Kate called their children and told them they could come home. The crisis was over, and their family was safe again. Their love had survived the worst test imaginable, and they were stronger than ever before.